But shall we just start off by asking you the kind of obvious question, really, of what was it like to be invited to be a member of the House of Lords?
I think, well, it was the surreal for me. And I think that maybe for viewers, listeners, it's worth noting that I absolutely love my job as the director of the Academy of Ideas, and I have never had any interest in being a politician in that formal sense. I've been involved in politics all my adult life, but grassroots, rank and file, Academy of Ideas style work, putting on public events, campaigning, trade unionism, all sorts of things. But what I'd never, ever, ever aspired to be was in a parliament. So the first thing that was weird was that I'd stood as a Brexit Party candidate in 2019, and I was very reluctant to do that when I was first asked by the Brexit Party, by Richard Tyson, Nigel Farage. I said, absolutely no way. On the one hand, I didn't feel politically at home with that tradition, but I also just didn't want to be in a European Parliament. Just didn't want to do it. But I emphasize that point because I then got persuaded, not by them, but by circumstances, that unless we fought for Brexit, it was going to be sold out. And eventually I thought, well, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And I stood. And so I spent 7 months as an elected politician in the European Parliament, a parliament I wanted to abolish and still do want to abolish, but certainly wanted us to get out of as the UK because we'd voted for it. At the end of my time there, I got a phone call, which I assumed was somebody, doing one of those setups for the radio saying, we'd like to offer you hello, it's somebody here from number 10, some nameless person. I never to this minute know who it was, just didn't catch the name. We'd like to offer you a peerage. And the most significant things were that they said, we know that you want to abolish the House of Lords. That's fine with us. We know you'll say no, but we want you to listen. And then they gave me reasons why I should do it. And I said, no, this is ridiculous and all the rest of it. And then they said, you've got 2 weeks to decide.
Blimey.
And I decided to do it.
I'm so pleased you did.
It was more because I felt as though a lot of people had put a lot of trust in me as the Brexit Party MEP for the Northwest. And whereas I wanted to go back to being the Academy of Ideas, they didn't want that. They wanted somehow it to continue in some way. And I felt, therefore, despite my reservations about the anti-democratic nature of the House of Lords, that maybe I could use it as a platform for those voters, let alone the issues around free speech, which I'm passionate about in relation to the Academy of Ideas.
So for somebody that didn't want to ever be a parliamentarian, you found yourself being a member of the European Parliament and now a member of the House of Lords, both bodies that you want to abolish.
Yes, exactly. Irony. But of course, it's very different being in a UK institution, because maybe I thought, and I confess to you, and I don't often admit this, that I think I thought, oh, I'll go in the House of Lords and I'll make these speeches and I'll use it as a platform. But I don't think I really understood what the House of Lords did. I associated it with being anti-democratic and blocking, for example, the Brexit vote. I associated it with the great and the good, unelected. Who the hell do they think they are? But I didn't really know what the job was. And I was shocked because I've never thought about how laws are made. And even though I was arguing when I was a Brexiteer that lawmaking had to be brought home to the UK, I then realized that, oh my God, now I'm a lawmaker. And I realized that possibly I should not be quite as glib about it as I had been, that actually now I had to take some responsibility for the laws that are made in this country, because I had this role as a legislator. And it was a very steep learning curve. And even now it still is, because actually lawmaking is very complicated and not as democratic as one would want it to be by any stretch of the imagination. but it's certainly not something you can just go in and posture around, or rather, too many people do. But that's not what I believe it should be. So I've ended up having to take the job much more seriously than I had previously thought I would.